so I kind of thought I would be there maybe for a year or two, and then 2 years turned to 4 years, 4 years turned into 6 years, and I went through 9 years.
So, Father Dave, welcome to St. Peter Parish here.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
It's great to see you back here.
It is great to be back at my home parish, St. Peter, in West Brandywine.
Yeah. So, take us back to when you were a younger person here as a parishioner, active parishioner, and sort of discerning your way into your own faith, but also eventually into the seminary.
Yeah, so I grew up in this parish, St. Peter. My whole life, we were part of the old church that was like maybe 5 miles up the road, and it was just kind of this tiny little country parish, and we loved it that way. And it's been a really wonderful story of just like a parish journey of just having to find new land and having to build a new church and really just having really good leadership, priestly example, I'd say, with Father Mike Fitzpatrick, that he's been the pastor here forever. So basically my whole life. Yeah, so we just kind of grew up in St. Peter's our whole life, and really just had a really wonderful experience and really just deeply love our Catholic faith. And so I knew that the faith would always be part of my life, that I always kind of wanted to be married and actually have my own big family as well. Like being one of 7, I wanted, a lot of children, and a really, really good, I'd say, experience overall of just what it's like to be active in a parish, where you get to meet other families, who just really love their faith and are trying to raise their family as best they know how, and getting to meet other great people, like I consider you one of my friends. And so the faith was always kind of part of my life. I don't really have any kind of tremendous or miraculous almost kind of story, except in the sense that when I was a senior in high school over at Bishop Shanahan, kind of like the local Catholic high school, the thought of the priesthood kind of came into my mind as a senior, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And I was a little bit scared, but I remember talking to Father Fitzpatrick about it and the priest who was at the high school, and just being open. I had applied to a lot of different colleges. I applied to 10 schools, and so I kind of thought that maybe it was just like another college process, and so I was like open to that. And then I realized it's a lot more than that. Like they want a whole autobiography. I think it was like at least 10 pages, and I was like, my life is not that exciting, 18 years old, but do what they call a psychological evaluation, just and then wanting to answer lots of questions on the application about like your experience of faith and kind of some of your religious background and theological thinking about like different aspects of church teaching, and make sure that you really want to be faithful to what we call the deposit of faith, right? The faith that Christ left his apostles, by which we build up the church and are sent out to build up his church. And so I was just kind of open to it, and I ended up applying. I was accepted, and I entered right after high school. I kind of thought that it's like, all right, seminary is a place to discern. And so I kind of thought I would be there maybe for a year or two, and then 2 years turned to 4 years, 4 years turned into 6 years, and I went through 9 years straight through the seminary. And then, last year, actually you helped organize it a lot, was we had a great kind of first mass, is what they call it, first mass of Thanksgiving, because the first mass that you have as a priest is the day you become a priest. And then the following day, you have a mass where you as a new priest are the main celebrant, and it's a mass of Thanksgiving. And it was a parish event. The whole parish showed up for it, and it was awesome. It was just a really, really great culmination of a long period of discernment, a long journey, towards the priesthood, really from right after high school.
Wow. And you mentioned that when you first discerned that you would be going into the seminary right after high school, and you had said that you had only expected maybe 2 years in the seminary. Can you kind of dive into that? Maybe what were you thinking in that moment? Because I know for a lot of young guys, there's a lot of fear when that, that P word, priest, kind of comes up in their prayer. A lot of times they're afraid of that. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of like a question about like discernment, right? And so, and really I didn't even know what that meant. at 18 years old, and that the seminary was really, it was a wonderful place to discern. And I would kind of define that word as just kind of being open to what God wants to do in your life, right? That God, there's this tremendous kind of exchange where like God very much has a personal calling for each of us, like which we would call vocation, but all of those are always ordered to the universal thing that we're all basically called to be saints, right? That God is trying to form us into His own likeness, that we're trying to become holy, that is godlike. And so yeah, so I felt kind of like they say, like a call to the priesthood, and it wasn't like Christ appeared to me, or it wasn't like, the heavens parted and I got to hear the voice of God, in some of these kind of great moments of epiphanies, right, all throughout the Gospels and things like that. It wasn't really like that. It was just like this peace that I felt of kind of the thought would come up in my mind. I didn't really know where it was coming from, or I'd kind of feel it almost surface in my heart, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And when I thought about it, it scared me a little bit, but it also made me excited and kind of when I talked about it, like there was peace, and so I kind of took it 1 year at a time, just kind of being open to like what God was leading me to, because in my heart, like I said, I very much wanted to be married, wanted to like have a wife and children, but I really felt a tremendous sense of peace in just if this is what God was calling me to, that I could actually live it out, like actually live out the vows that the church is asking me to live out, of being celibate and unmarried and praying and, striving after virtue. So, yeah, I would say that was like a hallmark of just trying to be open and discern, was like this peace that Christ offers us. Like we worship Him as the King of Peace. And so that if He's calling you to Himself, that if you feel absolutely kind of forced or cornered, that isn't really like a gift or a fruit of the Spirit. It's more like it's an invitation, right? And so it's there's tremendous freedom, but there's also great joy and peace, and then you get to see other people kind of help you discern, right? Like, so that's one of the parts of seminary, was having a good spiritual director, going through kind of classes on discernment, about like, they say basically good discernment is like discerning between two goods, right? Like choosing between two goods. And it's like God's offering you something, and then you're also desiring something, but it has to be between two goods, right? So if it's between something that's good and something that's bad, that's not good discernment. Like you need to sharpen your conscience a little bit and know that we shouldn't go after or, discern something that's bad, that is like against God's commandments and against His will. So like when it comes to like a particular vocation, like a particular calling, they're all going to be good, right? Because they're all going to lead you to holiness, which is the ultimate good. That's ultimately what we were made for. So whether it's marriage or priesthood or a single life of service, or a religious life, as a sister or a nun or a brother or a monk, things like that, that those are all ultimately like different goods for kind of chasing after God, and that God will help make it clear, right? It's not just like going through it in the dark. It's more like taking one step at a time, and kind of after going through an experience, reflecting on it and saying like, did that bring me joy or peace or happiness or contentment or holiness, and those are kind of good like indicators or hallmarks of being like, okay, I think like the Lord's leading me, right? And if you're like in seminary and you're like, I'm restless, I'm angry, I'm kind of annoyed that I don't really feel like I can actually completely give myself to this because I'm conflicted and that hasn't gone away, that those would be some indicators that it's like, okay, that like maybe God's not calling you to this, and that's okay, right? Because ultimately they're just different paths trying to lead you towards like that one good of like interior transformation, you know?